I caught my wife with my best friend in the bar, after which I ended the relationship with them and moved to another city. I just walked into my favorite country bar and grill, found a spot at a small table in the back, and ordered a sandwich, fries, and a beer. While I was chowing down on my meal, I glanced up and caught sight of my closest buddy, Tom, walking in with Emily. It hit me hard because I believed Emily was my girlfriend. I'd invited her out for tonight, but she told me she'd already committed to hanging out with some friends and suggested we go out tomorrow. Emily and I had been seeing each other for a solid 6 months, and I had the impression we were an item. We practically spent every weekend together. I could feel myself falling hard for her, and she claimed she felt the same about me. We even talked about the possibility of getting engaged, but we figured we'd give it a few more months, no rush. Someone hit the jukebox and played Crazy. I was tuned into the song, and it made me wonder if Tom was the new guy. The catch was, Tom was well aware of my feelings for Emily. I guess our guy code didn't matter much to him. I kept listening to the song while they were playing the part of a couple. The last verse played, "Crazy for thinking that my love could hold you. I'm crazy for trying and crazy for crying, and I'm crazy for loving you." I stood up from my table and walked over to Tom and Emily. They glanced at me, and Tom started to speak. "Jack, shut your mouth. If I ever cross paths with you again, one of us will end up spending a long while in the hospital. And as for you, Emily, I'm seriously let down. Clearly, we're done. You've revealed your true self to me." I walked out of the bar. The next day, my phone kept ringing incessantly. It was Emily, but I wasn't in the mood to talk. Later on, the phone rang again. This time it was Tom, so I picked up. "What do you want, Tom?" "Jack, I'm truly sorry. You know I've always found Emily attractive, and while we were talking at work, I asked her out and she agreed. Don't lie to me. You knew she was my girl, and you asked her out anyway. How many times have you been with her?" "Jack, it was only—" "How many freaking times, Tom? If you lie to me, I'll be on your tail. 3 times, Jack. We've been together 3 times. We sort of developed feelings for each other. I'm sorry." "What about Sarah? Does she know you cheated on her? She deserves way better than you, Tom. I don't want to see you ever again. And as for Emily, you two can have each other." I ended the call. Sarah was Tom's girlfriend, and all 3 of us, Tom, Sarah, and I, worked at the same factory. The phone rang once more, and it was Emily. I thought I might as well face it. "What's up, Emily? I want to say sorry." Tom asked me out several times, and I finally agreed to go out with him once. It didn't mean anything. Cut the crap. I talked to Tom, and he told me you were together at least 3 times. I bet it's even more than that. Was it the money? Good luck with that. You 2 money and hungry individuals deserve each other. I want absolutely nothing to do with you. The only person I feel sorry for is Sarah. She believed you and Tom were her friends. Stay out of my life and quit calling. I couldn't afford to send myself to college, so I jumped at the scholarship opportunity. I wanted to become a mechanical engineer because I loved working with my hands. I used to be a bit reserved, but I had a soft spot for the ladies. Growing up with sisters, I learned to treat women with respect. My mom's advice was to treat girls how I'd want my own sisters treated. I struck up a friendship with a guy named Mike. He came across as sociable, though he wasn't the sporty type. He did have some smarts about him and mentioned having some family money. He claimed he didn't have much now, but there might be an inheritance down the road. He was pursuing a business management degree. When football wasn't taking up my time, we'd hang out. Mike had a way with the ladies, and we hit up numerous parties where the women were in no short supply. I was the reserved one, yet quite a few girls showed interest in me. I've got to hand it to Mike for that. My own shyness might have kept me from striking up conversations otherwise. After graduation, I stuck around Ohio and landed a mechanical engineering job at Ford Motor Company. The pay was solid, and I found a small apartment near the plant. I also managed to snag a late-model pickup truck. Every week, I'd set aside some money and send my parents $600 monthly to lend a hand. My dad worked as a coal miner, and our family bond was strong. Mike landed a job at a warehouse right there in the same city as the Ford plant. It turned out he was one of our suppliers. Eventually, he worked his way up to becoming the warehouse manager. We'd hang out on weekends, and he spilled the beans about having a girlfriend at his workplace. Her name was Sarah, and she was the inventory control manager. He introduced me to Sarah, and I could have easily fallen head over heels for her right then, but Mike and I had a solid bro code of, no messing with each other's girls. It was a tough call, but I decided to honor that code. I did date a couple of gals from my own plant, but strictly as friends. I couldn't tag along on double dates with Mike much because, well, being around Sarah stirred up feelings. She was always a sweetheart to me. Mike extended an invite to me for their plant's Christmas party since they were one of our suppliers. I figured why not, and agreed to go. At their bash, I crossed paths with a stunning gal named Jessica. She had some curves and a real nice figure. Jessica dressed a bit more provocatively than Sarah and was quite the flirt. She shared that she worked with Mike and Sarah, holding down a secretary gig for one of the higher-ups. I told her about my job, and we spent the whole night dancing away. We decided to catch up again, and even went out with Mike and Sarah for New Year's Eve. Sarah threw out some words about being happy for me finding someone. but the sincerity was lacking. That night, I took Jessica back to my place. She was, well, pretty darn impressive if you catch my drift. The next morning, Jessica seemed surprised that I was living in a modest apartment. I explained that my job was relatively fresh, and I didn't need much to get by since I was also sending money home to help out my family. I let her know that someday, sure, I'd worry about all that material stuff, but not at the moment. She brought up Mike's family being wealthy and wondered if that was true. Considering he was my best bud, I confirmed it and mentioned they covered his education costs. Our dating saga rolled on, and we were hitting the town almost every weekend. My feelings were getting pretty deep, and she matched that with her own feelings. We did all sorts of stuff together, and yeah, the bedroom action was a highlight. I'll admit, though, her flirtatious demeanor and constant chatter about material things didn't sit all that well with me. Reassure her that we could carve out a good life together. Still, when we went on those double dates with Mike and Sarah, things felt off-kilter. There was a sort of tension between us, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Update 1. Emily and I had been together for about half a year. We chatted about our future, maybe even getting engaged down the line. Emily said we didn't need to rush into decisions. We hit up a county fair, and at one of those budget jewelry stands, I got Emily a friendship ring. I let her know it meant she was mine until she felt ready to take the engagement step. She grinned when she slipped it on. By the way, I should note that I hit the gym after work about 3 days a week. I'd managed to drop down to 230 pounds and felt pretty decent about how I looked. Then came that moment at the country bar and grill. Got to admit, seeing my girl and best bud locking lips really took a toll on me. After I spotted them at the restaurant and had a talk on the phone, I severed all connections with both of them. Even though I was mad as hell, I did feel pretty bad for Sarah. 2 weeks slipped by and my phone rang. "Jack, I'm so sorry about you and Emily." I figured she might have messed up, but I never thought it would be with Mike. "What's the deal, Sarah? Are you saying there were others at work?" I spotted her having lunch with her boss, Brad. It seemed like a regular thing. I thought about telling you, but didn't want to hurt you in case I was off base. Then I got wind of Emily and Mike. When I found out, I ditched them pronto. I cut ties with both of them. It's a bit tough seeing them together at work, but I stay occupied. Sarah, thanks for reaching out. I was concerned about you. You're one of my closest friends. Maybe we can catch up sometime. I'd be up for that, Jack. Good to chat with you. After our talk, I wasn't sure if I felt better or worse. A couple of weeks passed, and one evening while I was at the supermarket, I bumped into Sarah. "Hey, Jack, nice to see you. How's everything going?" "Pretty good. And you? Back in the dating game?" She gave me a smile. "I've turned down quite a few date offers because I've got my sights set on someone special. I don't want to mess things up if he decides to call." "Oh, I'm sorry. I was actually going to ask you if you'd like to." "Yes, I'd love to go out with you. You're the one I was hoping would ask. So when and where should we meet? I need to know how to dress. I was thinking about Saturday, hitting up my favorite country bar and grill. We exchanged goodbyes, and I confirmed that I'd pick her up at 6 o'clock. When I arrived at her place, she was rocking a Western-look jeans, a vest, cowgirl hat, and boots. She looked fantastic. I opened the truck door and she hopped in. Saturdays at the place featured a country western band and singer. We snagged a booth and ordered a couple of beers. The band wasn't starting for another hour, giving us time to chat. I was surprised to discover she was originally from Kentucky, just a county over from where I grew up. She went to college there, applied for jobs, and eventually landed a gig at the supply plant in Ohio. We placed our food order. I went for a double bacon cheeseburger and fries while she opted for a Reuben sandwich, and we shared the fries. It felt really nice to reconnect with her. She did inquire if this was the same bar where I caught Mike and Emily. I confirmed that it was indeed the place, but I wasn't going to let a couple of cheaters ruin my favorite hangout spot. She just gave me a smile in response. Once the band started playing, we got up to dance. They kicked things off with 2 slow songs to encourage couples onto the dance floor. The classic hits. That's what the crowd wanted to hear. They switched to a faster tune, and both of us sat out. I mentioned to Sarah that I wasn't much into the fast dances, but enjoyed watching the women move. They played a couple of Roy Orbison tunes, and I always had a soft spot for his music. Following that, they performed a few songs by Loretta Lynn. Sarah and I took to the floor for the slow ones. The announcer called the ladies up for some line dancing, and a few guys even joined them. "Why not join the line dancing?" I playfully asked Sarah. "You just want to check out my big A," she teased, smiling as she got up to join the other women. The line dancing started, and I couldn't help but keep my eyes on Sarah. She looked right at me and gave her booty a little shake. I grinned and even clapped for her. After the song wrapped up, she came over with a smile, and I leaned in to kiss her. Pulling back, I apologized. "I'm not sorry," she replied, kissing me again. We had a blast dancing and enjoying a few beers. Time flew by way too quickly. They announced that the last song was up next. I held Sarah close as we swayed to the music. As the song ended, I leaned in and planted a kiss on her lips. I dropped her off at her place and asked if she'd like to go out again the next Saturday. I suggested we could visit Cedar Point, a big amusement park in Ohio. She happily agreed, and we exchanged a goodnight kiss. I didn't want to rush things on our first date. I felt fantastic at work the entire week. On Friday, I gave Sarah a call to confirm our plans for Saturday. She mentioned she'd heard about the park, but hadn't been there before. On Saturday morning, I picked her up, and we set off for the park. During the drive, we chatted, and I brought up the topic of whether she had mentioned to Mike or Emily that we were dating. She told me she hadn't spoken to either of them about it. We had an amazing time riding all the roller coasters and trying out various other rides. The park also had a bunch of shows that we caught. On our way back, we decided to grab dinner at a Texas roadhouse. By the time we reached home, we were both pretty exhausted. Sarah shared her place with a roommate named Joan, a friendly lady likely in her 50s who worked at a retail store. Sarah appreciated having a roommate as Joan treated her like family, and they had a close bond. I informed Sarah that I'd be out of town the upcoming weekend, but expressed my interest in seeing her the week after. She replied that I should give her a call once I returned. After sharing a kiss, I told her that I genuinely cared for her. She responded by saying she had always liked me as well. Upon arriving home, I wasted no time and called her, inviting her to a significant dinner event. My boss was hosting an anniversary celebration for himself and his wife, and it was going to be held at the Hilton Hotel. I explained to Sarah that I had booked a hotel room for the night due to the expected drinking. I understood if she wasn't keen on attending. Her response was positive. "Jack, I'd be thrilled to go with you. We won't need 2 beds, you know. I want you to know I'm falling in love with you. Just promise to be honest and not lead me on. I would never cause you any harm, and I'll make sure nobody else does either. Sarah, could we use your car? I'd rather not show up at a fancy event in my truck. We can definitely take my car, and I'll let Joan know I won't be home that night." I parked my truck at her place, and we opted to use her car for the event. We arrived early, intending to get ready at the hotel. During our ride, Sarah mentioned that she was considering finding a new job due to her discomfort from regularly seeing Mike and Emily. She even shared a rumor that Emily might be pregnant. For the party, I got dressed in the bathroom wearing a tuxedo. When I emerged into the room, Sarah looked stunning. She wore a form-fitting blue dress that highlighted her figure, and her hair flowed down to her shoulders. She had an elegant yet alluring presence. "You look absolutely gorgeous." "I might not even care about the party itself," I remarked. Her response was cheeky. "Oh, no, you don't. I didn't go through all this effort just to change again," she said with a smile, and we headed downstairs to the party. Upon our arrival, my boss and his wife greeted us. He introduced his wife and extended a warm welcome to the party. As they moved away, I noticed him stealing glances at Sarah. Knowing many of the attendees, I introduced Sarah to the people I knew. She received numerous compliments. We grabbed some drinks and found a table. The event had an array of appetizers with plans for a dinner later on. Sarah recognized a couple of women she was familiar with from her role in inventory control. It put her in contact with these women regularly. I approached the head of human resources, Mary, and initiated a conversation. "Mary, are there any job openings in inventory control or the supply chain?" "As a matter of fact, there is. Janice is retiring next month, and I've been tasked with finding her replacement. Do you have anyone in mind? Actually, my date you've met her, Sarah, is searching for a new job opportunity. She currently handles inventory control. She enjoys her work, but is ready for a change. Tell her to come see me on Monday, and I'll schedule an interview for her. She's quite a striking woman." "Thank you, Mary. I really appreciate it. I'm sure you do," Mary chuckled. The party turned out to be a blast. I had a few dances with the wives of the employees, and Sarah had her turn dancing with their husbands. Most of the time, though, we were dancing together. The dinner spread was absolutely fantastic, offering choices like roast beef, chicken, or shrimp, along with all the accompanying dishes. After a couple more drinks, we bid our goodnights to the host and headed up to our hotel room. "Sarah, are you absolutely certain about this? I don't want you to think I'm trying to take advantage of you." "Jack, stop overthinking and just be with me," she replied. Helping her out of her dress, we neatly hung it up along with my tuxedo. We pulled down the covers on the bed and, well, you know. I turned off the lights, and we snuggled in close, falling asleep together. The last words I heard before drifting off were, "I love you, Jack." I woke up to the aroma of fresh coffee. Sarah had taken a shower, gotten dressed, and even brought us each a cup of coffee. "Morning, Jack. Sleep well?" "It's been a while," I responded. After a quick shower and a cup of coffee, both Sarah and I went down to the dining room for a pleasant breakfast among the fellow employees. We saw quite a few familiar faces, all with smiles on their faces. "Looks like we've become a known couple," I mentioned to Sarah. Mary, the HR person, stopped by our table on her way out and told Sarah, "See you Monday," before leaving with a smile. "What was that about?" Sarah questioned. "I forgot to tell you that you've got an interview with Mary on Monday at Ford," I said with a grin. "Remember you mentioned considering a job change?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "Jack, I hope this isn't a dream. I love you so much." We chatted on our way back home. "Sarah, I hope I'm not rushing things, but in 3 weeks I'm planning to visit my parents in Austin. I'd love for you to come along. I'll be leaving on Friday evening and returning on Sunday. We can also make a stop to see your parents if you'd like. I'd be happy to join you, but my parents are a bit traditional, and we might not be sharing a bed. I'm confident things will fall into place, I answered. Update 2. We set off for our trip to Austin. Sarah mentioned the latest rumor about Mike and Emily planning to get married next month due to Emily's visible pregnancy. I believe Emily thinks she's marrying into wealth, but she'll soon realize it's not Mike who's well off, but his parents. Mike may live lavishly, but it's mostly based on debt, I shared with her. Upon arriving at my parents' home, we were greeted by a spacious old farmhouse with numerous bedrooms and bathrooms. My siblings, who still resided there, came out to welcome us, followed by Mom and Dad. I embraced everyone and introduced Sarah, who received warm hugs from them all. We spent a couple of hours chatting. I knew my family would adore Sarah. She was looking at the photos on the wall, particularly one of me in my football uniform from my younger days. I noticed tears in her eyes. Sarah, what's wrong? Are you all right? Do you recall that time when you were playing football during an away game? After the match, you walked through the tunnel, and there were 2 guys attempting to drag a girl in a yellow sweater into the tunnel. You confronted one of the guys, threw him down, and then tackled the other. You warned them that if they ever bothered the girl again, you'd return to finish what you started, then you walked away into the locker room. Yeah, I remember that incident, but I've never shared it with anyone. How did you come to know about it? Jack, I was that girl. I never saw your face, just the number 52 on your jersey. I tried to find you afterward, but no one knew who you were. I did manage to find out your name was Jack, but that was all I could discover. I had been waiting by the tunnel for my friend when those 2 guys grabbed me, dragged me into the tunnel, and said they wanted to have some fun. I shouted at them to let me go. That's when you appeared. They never bothered me again. She leaned in and kissed me. There was something about you that felt familiar the first time I met you when Mike introduced us. That's the only positive thing I can say about Mike. He introduced us. My mom had prepared a bed for Sarah and informed me that I could sleep in the basement where there was an extra bed. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, Sarah joined me. We shared a quiet, intimate moment, though it was a bit challenging due to the circumstances, and she returned to her bed about an hour later. On Saturday, we visited Sarah's family. She hadn't mentioned that her parents were well off. They had a lovely house, and Sarah had 2 younger, attractive sisters. They were a few years younger than Sarah. She introduced me as her boyfriend. I overheard Sandy, one of her sisters, saying to Sarah that I looked quite handsome. We went inside and chatted for a while. Hank, her father, inquired about my job and background. He had his concerns about his little girl, as he affectionately referred to her. Mr. Carter, I'd like to talk to you about marrying your daughter. I'm here to ask for your blessing. Sarah and I hadn't discussed this beforehand, so she seemed surprised and teary-eyed as she looked at me. Even though we haven't been together for a long time, our love is strong, and we believe we can build a great life together in marriage. Jack, I appreciate that you came to talk to me, though you didn't have to. You should know by now that Sarah follows her heart. Sarah, do you love Jack? Yes, Daddy, I truly do, with all my heart. Then you have my blessing. On one condition, you 2 must get married here in Austin, so your mom and I can give you a proper wedding. Oh, and we'll cover the expenses. I surprised everyone when I took out an engagement ring from my pocket, knelt down on one knee and proposed to Sarah. She said yes, kissed me, and then rushed over to kiss her dad and embrace her mom, who was shedding tears of joy. We all stood up and enjoyed a fantastic chicken dinner together. We went back to my parents' house and mentioned to the Carters that we'd keep them updated about our future plans. When we shared the news of our engagement with Mom and Dad, they were absolutely thrilled. Many of my relatives who still live nearby were coming over for a barbecue. Dad proudly claimed the role of grill master while Mom prepared the meat and other dishes inside. Sarah offered to help in the kitchen. She mentioned she enjoyed cooking too. All my relatives came by to greet me and get acquainted with Sarah. She was the first woman I'd brought home to meet the family, and they all assured me that she was a keeper and encouraged me to make her happy. After a day of lively celebration, we bid farewell to our relatives and promised to inform them of our wedding date. Just before we headed to bed, Sarah whispered to me that my mom had warned her about an obstacle on the stairs. It turned out she accidentally kicked a pair of shoes, and they tumbled down the stairs. Sarah tried to apologize, but Mom reassured her, saying she had been young once and that Sarah's lively spirit was probably why she ended up with so many children. Sarah did come back downstairs again, and we shared a quiet and intimate moment together. We tried to keep things hushed, but you know how that goes. She didn't head back upstairs until nearly 5 o'clock in the morning. After a night of intimacy, we drifted off to sleep. In the morning, Mom and Sarah exchanged knowing smiles. We all had a hearty country breakfast, then said our goodbyes with hugs and kisses before making our way home. On Monday, Sarah had her appointment with the HR department. By Tuesday, she received a call from Mary, who informed her that she got the job and could submit her 2-week notice. She called me to share the news, but I was already in the loop. We decided to celebrate by going out for dinner that evening at my favorite country bar. At the restaurant, we both ordered steak dinners. Sarah mentioned that Mike and Emily were on vacation that week and the next. They were off to Las Vegas to tie the knot. She remarked that it was the most enjoyable 2 weeks she'd experienced at the plant since she didn't have to deal with Mike and Emily. She added that everyone was sad to see her leave, but they understood she was moving on to a better opportunity. Working at Ford meant having some of the highest-paying jobs in the region. Sarah felt fortunate to have secured the interview and the job offer. She had earned it. She kept our dating and engagement a secret from everyone else. She revealed that she left an anonymous note on Mike's desk before departing. The note advised him to consider a DNA test once the baby was born, given his wife's frequent lunches with her boss. The note concluded with congratulations, but she deliberately left it unsigned. From the time she started at our workplace, she always wore a radiant smile. Whenever guys approached her for dates, she proudly displayed her engagement ring and made it clear that she was engaged to me. They wisely knew not to cross any boundaries. Sarah shared that Joan was assisting her in planning the wedding. Joan played the role of a caring guardian. Joan had a married daughter of her own, and she and Sarah became close friends, sharing expenses as roommates. I made it a point to drop by a couple of times each week to lend a hand wherever needed. I reached out to my mom and asked if she could provide a list of relatives and friends to invite from our side of the family. My mom took it a step further and bought invitations, taking care of the invites for us. I provided her with the wedding date, which was set for 5 months down the line. Sarah spoke to her mom and shared the wedding date with her as well. Her parents were taking on the responsibility of finding a suitable church and a spacious venue for the reception. Her mom volunteered to handle sending out invitations to their side of the family. Given her dad's business background, he had numerous connections and clients. While I was quite anxious about everything, I was actually contributing the least. I approached several colleagues at work to see if they'd be interested in attending the wedding. I informed them that we were planning to get married in Austin. Surprisingly, many expressed their intention to attend. Thanks to Joan's connections at the retail store, she arranged for a dressmaker for Sarah's wedding gown. Joan also confirmed that she and her daughter would be present at the event. Sophie, Sarah's mother, called and informed us that she had secured a caterer. However, she mentioned that she would need a head count closer to the wedding date. Sophie also mentioned that her husband, Hank, had lined up a talented band. It seemed like all the pieces were falling into place. I asked Sarah if she thought we were going overboard with the preparations. It was clear that this wedding was going to come with a hefty price tag. Charlie, this grand wedding idea is entirely my parents' vision. They've dreamed of this kind of wedding since we were little girls. Trust me, my sisters will be having similarly lavish weddings. Why didn't you ever tell me you came from a wealthy background? I kept my family's financial background hidden because I wanted you to be interested in me for who I am. Just so you know, I only shared this with Joan and not even Mike knows. Does this revelation change anything for you? No, I'm interested in you as a person, not anything else. If you'd like, I'm willing to sign a prenuptial agreement. Charlie, there won't be any need for a prenup. I believe we'll be together forever. Besides, I don't possess much wealth at the moment. Perhaps in the future through inheritance, but not much now. I'll have a loving husband to support me. Sarah sorted out her party lineup. Her father would walk her down the aisle, her older sister would serve as the maid of honor, while her younger sister would be one of the bridesmaids. She invited my 2 married sisters to be bridesmaids as well. My brothers-in-law would be my groomsmen, and my single brothers would be paired with her sisters. It turned out that my younger brother would be my best man. My niece and nephew were chosen as the flower girl and ring bearer, respectively. We reached out to them all, and they gladly accepted. Thankfully, it truly became a family affair. Sarah was thriving in her new job, and everyone admired her. She was well loved by her colleagues. What's not to like? A dilemma arose since she had only worked there for 5 months. She hadn't accrued any vacation days. We brainstormed and considered the option of heading down on Friday night, getting married on Saturday, and returning on Sunday. It would be a whirlwind, but with limited choices, it seemed doable. Just 3 weeks before the wedding, the plant manager summoned me to his office. We had a good rapport, and he even mentioned that he was planning to attend the wedding. "Hey, Charlie, I heard you're dealing with an issue around the time of your wedding." Mary mentioned that. "You're leaving on Friday, tying the knot on Saturday and returning on Sunday, is that right?" "Yeah, Mark, that's the plan. Sarah doesn't have any vacation days left." "Well, Charlie, make sure you let your lovely wife know that we're granting her personal time from Thursday all the way through the next week. Also, I've got 2 tickets for a 4-day cruise as a honeymoon gift. Thanks, Mark. I'm sure she'll be thrilled." I shook his hand and got in touch with Sarah in her office to inform her that we're going out for lunch. I told her I had something important to discuss. While at the restaurant, Sarah inquired, "What's up, Charlie? What's this thing you want to talk about?" Mark called me into his office and informed me that they're giving you time off from Thursday to the entire following week. We don't have to rush to get there or hurry back. And wait, there's more. He gave us 2 tickets for a 4-day cruise as a wedding gift. I placed the tickets on the table. Naturally, my Sarah started tearing up. We had everything ready for the wedding and could head down on Thursday, which made things simpler for us. Rehearsal and the rehearsal dinner took place on Friday. I checked with my dad if he needed money, and he shared that he had kept aside the money I sent him since we announced the wedding. I really admired and respected that man. After the dinner, I gave Sarah a kiss and let her know I'd be seeing her the next day. Sarah had informed her mom about the number of people attending both the wedding and the reception. She didn't tell me the count, mentioning that I was already nervous enough. I knew all my siblings, aunts, uncles, and their families would be present. I heard that the motels in both counties had been fully booked for months. I hoped that our guests were able to find accommodations. On Saturday morning, I woke up and my mom insisted I had breakfast. I couldn't go through the whole day on an empty, anxious stomach. During our breakfast conversation, Mom mentioned that they had met the Carters and found them to be really friendly people who thought highly of me. After breakfast, I took a long shower and shaved. I got dressed in my tuxedo, a white one to match Sarah's dress. My brothers were also there wearing black tuxedos. All 4 of them were part of the wedding party. It was time to head to the church. The church was located in the neighboring county, but it was only 30 miles away. The church was quite large, and my brother mentioned that it could accommodate more than 700 people. As the guests began to arrive, my brothers and I helped them find their seats. As they walked in, they said I didn't have to assist, but I insisted on doing something. Joan and her daughter showed up, and I directed them to sit with the families on Sarah's side. I was seating relatives whom I hadn't seen in years. I was happy to spot some of my co-workers at the event. My boss, Mark, and his wife had flown in for the occasion. I was then instructed to go to the front of the church because Sarah's limousine had arrived, and I wasn't supposed to see her before the ceremony. I went up to chat with my parents briefly. A woman began playing some music on the organ. After a couple of songs, an announcement was made for the guests to take their seats as the wedding was about to start. Every wedding has its unique touches, and I walked to the front and stood beside the minister. The first one to walk down the aisle was Sandy, accompanied by my brother. They made a great-looking pair. They both went up to the front and took their positions. Following them was Marie, who came down with my other single brother. After that, my married brothers walked down with their wives. One of my nephews then came down as the ring-bearer while I held the actual wedding ring in my pocket. 2 men rolled out a white cloth, and my niece strolled down the aisle scattering rose petals. The music shifted, and everyone stood up. The wedding march began, and Sarah was making her way down the aisle, escorted by her very proud father. She looked incredibly beautiful, like an angel. I could feel tears streaming down my face. "Who presents this woman to this man?" the minister asked. "Her mother and I," her father replied. We exchanged our vows. I placed the ring on her finger, and then I was given the go-ahead to kiss the bride, which I did. "Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Mr. and Mrs. Jack Thompson." Everyone rose to their feet and cheered. We stood at the church door alongside the other members of the wedding party, expressing our gratitude to everyone who had attended. It took more than 30 minutes for the church to clear out. As people left, they all headed over to the rented hall. When we arrived at the hall, there were drinks and appetizers available for everyone. A band was playing, though not many were dancing at that moment. Tables had been arranged all around. Upon our entrance, the entire crowd stood up and cheered for us. We took our seats. Mr. Carter said a few words and then announced that the food was ready. The serving tables were set up on both sides, making sure everyone got their food quite swiftly. Although Sarah and I were served first, we probably finished eating last as we kept pausing to kiss every 10 seconds in response to the glass clinking. Some of the tables were moved back from the dance floor to make more space for dancing. Sarah and I were the initial pair to hit the dance floor, followed by the rest of the wedding party, and then everyone joined in. The reception carried on for a solid 4 hours. Some guests even helped themselves to another round of food. It truly was a fantastic night. Epilogue. We had an amazing time during our cruise. It was a good decision to bring my truck to the wedding. I rented a small U-Haul and loaded it up with all the gifts we were given. When we returned home, we started looking for a new house. Eventually, we found a nice 3-bedroom home with a hot tub. We spent a couple of weeks at my small apartment initially, but Sarah felt we needed something a bit more spacious. We decided to leave the gifts we brought back at Joan's house since we wouldn't be living there. We checked if she could manage on her own, and she assured us she didn't have any financial troubles. She simply enjoyed taking care of Sarah, but now that responsibility was shared with me. Every evening we'd work on writing thank you cards. I believe we're just about finished with that now. We also have lunch together at work around 3 times a week. It's been 4 months since the wedding, and things are going really well. We haven't had any arguments, and we always discuss and resolve any differences we have. We've always been told that communication is key, which is something we actively practice. Sarah mentioned that one of her friends from another workplace called her and discovered that Emily is in financial trouble with a lot of debt. There was also a rumor that someone advised Mike to consider a DNA test when Emily has the baby. However, they're uncertain about the source of that information. A few weeks passed, and then Sarah received another phone call informing her about some issues going on with Mike and Emily. It turns out Mike took a DNA test, and it confirmed that he wasn't the father. Isn't that just wild? Thanks for reading my story. The part about the country music is true. I actually saw it on PBS. The end.